So I'm Dean Jacobs from Walpole First Nation. I've been a former chief of our First Nation government. Currently, I'm a senior advisor to our First Nation government. I've been working for, this is my 50th year working for the First Nation in various capacities. So one of the things that I'm working on currently is external engagement and accommodation, as well as land claims, and trying to change and shift the conversation from not just the duty to consult and accommodate, but also look beyond the hosting agreements to more of a equity opportunities with development in our territory. So I'm trying to really educate the non-Indigenous communities around our community, our First Nation, because they are within our territory. And that's one of the first areas that I focus on. It's education of who we are as a First Nation, who we are, where we are, and some of our history. Because quite frankly, we can't rely on others to know about us, because I think, of course, we're the experts. So I think that First Nations have an obligation to step up and drive the engagement and consultation and provide that information so that relationships can develop. And once a relationship is in place, then there are opportunities that are mutual for both proponents and First Nations. Those opportunities could be employment, environmental mitigation of impacts in our territory, and as I mentioned, the next step is shifting the conversation to equity, partnership, and development in our territory. The preserves are a more recent experiment in the last couple hundred years, and we need to really look at beyond that, a territorial approach. So we need to be involved in decisions in the region and the territory, not just impacts to the First Nation reserve and community. So it's a good first step to do as much research as possible with available resources on First Nation communities within their municipality range or their areas of jurisdiction and management. So do that homework first, and then reach out to the First Nation directly and start developing a relationship about learning about the First Nation from the First Nation people themselves. I always say that if you know at least 3 things about a First Nation community, it's a good start. So for our First Nation, it would be location, location, location. We're located under a 2 continental migratory bird flyways, so right under the intersection of the Mississippi and the Atlantic flyway. So it's a very important place in terms of the scale of the continent, not just the region. So it's important to understand not just land above water, but land underwater is important to us. And the economies of the past, traditional economies, were based on the resources of the land and what the waters provided our ancestors. And they can still play a role in today's development, because we still hunt and fish and gather, and those disciplines are very honorable and important to who we are as people. Part of what we're now trying to do is to not necessarily drive that strategy, but work together with industry, other governments to promote this area for development in a good way, working together. It just only makes sense. It's our territory, municipalities and other governments. They're part of our homeland, so it only makes sense if that we're part of the decision-making process. It's like it's our home. So in your house or your home, you invite some guests to your house and you don't expect them to come into your house and start rearranging the furniture. And that's the same way we look at proponents. They are hosts. We're the host in our community. They're invited into our community. We have protocols. We have codes of practice of how to be a good proponent in our territory. So it's important that First Nations share what those are, and at some point in the future we might get to the point where we're beyond co-management or beyond co-development, that we might get to the point where we can step up to the jurisdictional level. And of course what I'm talking about is sovereignty. So we can't lose sight of those long-term goals and objectives from a First Nation Indigenous perspective.